Welcome to the debate. Our focus today, well, it transcends a simple business analysis of a motorcycle company. We are examining Harley-Davidson as a complex socio-technical system, a brand that is inextricably fused with America's post-war cultural identity, its industrial history, and the evolution of the concept of rugged, often hyper-masculine independence.
Indeed. Harley-Davidson represents one of the most powerful examples of commodified iconography in modern history. I mean, it's impossible to discuss the brand's enduring appeal without dissecting the elaborate mythology built around the outlaw biker, the post-war veteran, and that enduring narrative of American freedom.
And that leads directly to our central question. Is the significance of Harley-Davidson defined by its enduring countercultural mythology acting as a kind of immutable cultural anchor? Or is the company now predominantly defined by the strategic constraints imposed by shifting global markets and dramatic demographic change? I'm going to argue that the brand's power and its premium pricing rests on that fixed, stabilized cultural anchor.
And I'll take the opposing view. While that mythology was once their greatest asset, I believe it's aged poorly. It has become a significant strategic liability, a powerful constraint that forces radical corporate transformation, often requiring the company to contradict the very heritage it claims to embody just to survive.
My position is that Harley-Davidson's ability to survive and to charge a premium is rooted in the profound stability of its mythology. What HD successfully sells isn't merely a machine, but symbolic capital. It offers an emotional identity tied deeply to what sociologists term the soldier-laborer habitus, that visceral, physical experience of the working class or the independent rebel. Now, critically, this identity is sold primarily to affluent consumers who are seeking an escape from their managerial or professional lives. The material shows that the average wage of an HD owner was already over $80,000 way back in 2003. So they're purchasing a highly commodified fantasy of freedom, of corporeal masculinity, and rebellion. The enduring appeal is sustained through the loyal consumer tribe the company cultivated, the Harley Owners Group, HOG, which ensures unparalleled brand loyalty and, a customer lifetime value that far exceeds the industry average. That distinct V-twin engine sound, the weight, the rugged design, these are emotional artifacts. They represent a fixed archetype that stands in powerful contrast to the efficient, modernized aesthetic of its global competitors. That fixed archetype is the anchor.
I challenge that premise. That powerful mythology, while profitable for decades, now functions less as a sturdy anchor and more as a ball and chain. It's forcing the company into these strategic contradictions just to address inevitable demographic and economic headwinds. The industrial reality of the company is defined by a deep tension. The traditional commitment to the Made in America ethos, which is absolutely central to the rebellious archetype you describe, fundamentally clashes with the modern economic necessity of globalization and efficient supply chain management. We know the core customer is aging out, and rapidly, which demands that HD court entirely new customer segments: younger riders, women, diverse communities. But how can they possibly achieve this necessary market expansion when that traditional masculine image actively inhibits and, gatekeeps those groups? The material clearly demonstrates that economic reality supersedes the myth when the company is forced to move manufacturing to sites like Thailand, Brazil, and India to manage tariffs and access foreign markets. That action is widely seen as a betrayal of the American icon legacy, and it proves that the myth is conditional. It's entirely mutable when profit margins are on the line.
I would challenge that interpretation of their manufacturing choices. You frame the movement of production offshore as a betrayal of identity. I argue it's a strategic compartmentalization, one designed to protect the very image you claim is so fragile. That manufacturing shift primarily serves international consumption. It strategically insulates the image for the crucial domestic market, which, let's be honest, remains the bedrock of their revenue. Furthermore, the idea that HD is some fragile icon constrained by its history, it just ignores the company's documented mastery of crisis navigation. Consider their nadir in the 1980s. They were facing a quality crisis. Dealers were literally placing cardboard under bikes to catch oil leaks, and were nearly decimated by superior Japanese imports. They survived by successfully lobbying the government for protective tariffs. Then, in a masterful stroke of public relations, they proactively asked the U.S. government to rescind those tariffs early. In 1987, they showed they didn't need government protection, reinforcing their perceived strength and independence in the public eye. This shows the loyalty they cultivate is affective. It's based on feeling and narrative, not purely industrial. The identity survives because they are masters of managing the narrative of the American spirit, irrespective of where some components are sourced.
That's when the argument fails to account for public reaction. If loyalty is truly affective, not industrial, as you claim, how do you account for the political and public blowback that just erupted when the company announced the Thai facility? That outrage necessitated HD shifting some production back to the U.S. to avoid consumer wrath. Doesn't that prove the physical location does matter to the core base? The contradiction isn't just about optics. Even the U.S. assembled bikes are products of a global system, incorporating sophisticated technology from suppliers like Bosch and Brembo. The reality of the means of production is entirely divorced from the mythology they sell, and I think the core rider knows it. But let's move from where they're built to who they're built for, because the hyper-masculine image is perhaps the ultimate gatekeeper.
Well, the power of that tough guy image is undeniable. I'd argue that the ability to commodify the perceived corporeal erotics, the powerful physical appeal and the sense of risk and power of the soldier-laborer habitus allows them to sell escapism at a premium. It's a canvas for projection. Affluent riders who are constrained by the rigid rules of normative society pay for the ability to perform that physical raw fantasy, and it bolsters their own sense of symbolic capital.
Discourse functions as a rigid, exclusionary gatekeeper that is now imposing a severe economic constraint. Evidence shows that new demographics, specifically women riders, often encounter poor reception right at the point of sale. Dealership staff actively perpetuate an exclusive clique mentality, policing the boundaries of who belongs to the HD identity. I mean, if the identity is about freedom and rebellion, why is it so rigidly defined and enforced at the retail level? Corporate HD recognizes this problem. They identified demographics like the gay and lesbian market as ideal, noting their higher disposable income and an inherent outsider's mentality that aligns with the rebellious myth. Yet that same corporation hesitated to actively market to them for fear of the core rider's likely dislike. That fear is measurable, and it is costly. The fixed masculine ideology you're defending is actively constraining the crucial market expansion necessary for the company's long-term health. It is a cage that prevents them from reaching these necessary new markets.
I'm not convinced that the resistance found at the dealership level fully undermines the strength of the corporate mythology. I mean, that suggests a failure in execution or management, not a fundamental failing of the core identity itself. In many ways, that exclusivity is exactly what HD owners are paying a premium for. The feeling of being part of something raw, something protected from the mainstream, even if it is, commodified authenticity. The material suggests that for many core riders, the attraction is the aura of societal disapproval, ignorance, and fear. The brand successfully sells that resistance and exclusivity. So the real question is whether the potential growth from new demographics is worth the risk of brand dilution among the core riders who generate the majority of the current profit.
That risk assessment is now being made for them by technological and demographic entropy. And this brings us to the technological frontier, which I believe most clearly exposes the failure of the anchor. The core identity of Harley-Davidson is tied directly to the V-twin engine. The noise, the vibration, the weight, and the feel what T.E. Lawrence admired decades ago. With the core customer base shrinking, the company must embrace radical departures like the quiet single-gear live-wire electric bike and the Pan America Adventure touring segment, simply to maintain relevance. This strategic shift towards performance, adventure, and technological innovation is a necessary and highly aggressive marketing departure from pure heritage. It's survival-driven brand dilution.
I would challenge the necessity of that dilution, though. Introducing a quiet single-gear electric motorcycle like Livewire is a massive risk precisely because it launches a product completely outside the brand's core offering. Brand dilution fundamentally occurs when the new product is irrelevant or inconsistent with what the brand is known for. The power of HD is sensory. It's a sound, the mechanical presence, the honeyed, untiring smoothness that Lawrence described of an engine. If you remove that central sonic characteristic, you confuse customers about the fundamental ethos of the brand. You risk rendering the entire core identity obsolete for the sake of chasing a nascent electric market. This attempt to decouple the machine from the myth to build a bike that is purely a technological product rather than a cultural artifact is financially tenuous, particularly when we look at the financial results.
But the company have no choice. Stagnation is a certainty otherwise. The technological and demographic pressures are so immense that the risk of dilution is simply the lesser of two evils compared to market entropy. The traditional heavy cruiser segment, profitable as it is now, is shrinking globally. We see the financial consequences of this strategic constraint. The Livewire segment is already facing substantial operational losses, projected at $110 million in 2024. This is a massive expense. They are forced to bet heavily against their own heritage to appeal to new riders, even while that bet actively hemorrhages cash and confuses their existing loyal base.
Exactly. They are in a state of unresolved, system-wide tension. They are simultaneously strengthening the core touring segments, reinforcing the anchor, and investing heavily in a loss-leading electric future, attempting to cut the chain. The cultural identity demands one product, built on noise and tradition, but the economic reality of the 21st century demands another, one built on silence and innovation. They're caught in the impossible position of having to destroy their symbol to save their company. The mythology is acting as a constraint because deviation is economically disastrous.
And yet, they must deviate. That necessity, despite the high cost and the contradiction, defines their modern trajectory. The icon isn't immutable, it is mutable under pressure.
So we have demonstrated that Harley-Davidson maintains its iconic status not through accident, but by leveraging a powerfully stabilized, emotionally charged mythology rooted in post-war masculinity and American industrial endurance. This enduring cultural weight allows it to charge a significant premium and sustain deep loyalty, proving the power of the anchor even when economic realities require complex global compromises.
Conversely, the material makes a powerful case that the mythology itself has evolved into a strategic liability, necessitating aggressive and often contradictory strategies, from radical global manufacturing diversification to the existential pursuit of a silent electric future. The cultural challenge is that the icon must actively dismantle or dilute aspects of its own heritage, the roar, the American exclusivity, simply to appeal to the modern global market.
Ultimately, Harley-Davidson forces us to ask, can a deeply entrenched cultural identity survive when its economic model depends on rejecting the very core values that built it?
Right, and in the context of our broader series on American icons, analyzing Harley-Davidson offers an essential lens into what defines enduring American identity in an era of relentless technological and demographic change.
We leave it to the listener to consider whether the iconic American roar is a fixed anthem of freedom or a fading echo of a past that must be overwritten for the company to proceed.